This video provides a short introduction to the Maturity Assessment Framework and associated tool that's been developed by the World Bank's Global Data Facility mobile phone data window. The purpose of this tool is to help people who are planning mobile phone data initiatives to think through the different dimensions that are required to take an initiative forward and to assess the different levels of maturity that exist within each of those dimensions. In particular, it's designed to help identify the types of support that might be required and to understand how an initiative is progressing within the program. There are 4 maturity stages that have been identified within the framework. These are pre-foundation, foundation, practitioner, and expert. A description for each of these stages is available within the framework. There are 3 assessment areas that have been identified within the framework, which help us to answer the questions that are critical for understanding where we are. One of them is feasibility. The critical question here is, to what extent do the conditions in a country allow for and facilitate the use of mobile phone data for official statistics? Another assessment area is impactfulness. To what extent does the use of the mobile phone data for official statistics result in improved decision-making that benefits the people of the country? And finally, sustainability. To what extent do the current structures and processes enable the long-term use of mobile phone data for official statistics? Each assessment area is broken down into a number of different assessment dimensions. Feasibility has the most. These include suitability of the legal and governance environment, stakeholder engagement and alignment, suitability of the data infrastructure, suitability of the data environment, human resource, capacity, and availability. For impactfulness, we consider things like identification and implementation of applications and potential for and protections against misuse. For sustainability, we consider the sustainability prospects of an initiative. When it comes to feasibility, when we think about things like the suitability of the legal and governance environment, we're thinking about things like the legal and regulatory framework, the data governance policies of the data controller, like the mobile network operator or the telecoms regulator, the data governance policies of the data end users, such as a National Statistical Office or a ministry, department, or agency. And we're also thinking about public perception. When it comes to thinking about stakeholder engagement and alignment, we're thinking about things like the disposition of the data controller to sharing data, the disposition of the data end user to receiving data, and how the different regulatory bodies view the initiative. When we think about the suitability of data infrastructure, we're thinking about things like the data infrastructure at the data controller, as well as the data infrastructure at the data user. Considerations about the suitability of the data environment hinge on things like, what's the partnership level data coverage look like? What's the availability and suitability of the cell data that's available? What's the availability and suitability of other data sources, such as census data or survey data, to help with things like bias adjustment and triangulation? What's the suitability of complementary data sources from other data end users depending on the end use case? And what's the acceptance and usage of non-traditional data sources by the receiving parties? Finally, within this area of assessment, we're thinking about the dimension of human resource capabilities and capacities and their availability both at the data controller and at the data user. For impactfulness, we're thinking about things like the identification of the applications and the implementation of the applications such that they're going to be actually useful for the end users and end parties who need to be consulted, and sharing, publication, and use of the outputs. It's no good doing a lot of data analysis if it doesn't get shared. Similarly, impactfulness is determined by things like the awareness of ethical considerations and taking those into account in planning a mobile phone data initiative, as well as the suitability of the ethical oversight and governance processes that are in place to govern the initiative. When it comes to sustainability prospects, we're thinking about things like the prospects for ongoing funding of their work, the prospects for ongoing uninterrupted data access, and the capacity of the stakeholders to maintain the data pipeline independently. That was a quick introduction. What about your own initiative, country, or organization?